In the frozen heart of the Soviet Union, during the bitter winter of 1959, 9 experienced hikers ventured into the unforgiving Ural Mountains. They were young, athletic, and strictly disciplined students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, led by a charismatic 23-year-old engineering student named Igor Dyatlov. Their goal was to reach Mount Otorten, a grueling 200-mile trek through a completely unpopulated wilderness. It was a route classified as Category 3, the most difficult and dangerous level in the Soviet hiking certification system. But this group was highly trained. They knew how to survive in sub-zero temperatures, they knew how to build snow caves, and they knew the mountains. They were not amateurs. Yet, within a matter of days, every single one of them would be dead under circumstances so bizarre, terrifying, and inexplicable that their story would become the greatest unsolved mystery of the 20th century. On January 27th, a group of 10 people began their ascent. The next day, a stroke of immense luck saved one man's life. Ural, suffering from severe joint pain and a flare-up of rheumatism, was forced to turn back. He hugged his friends goodbye, taking their extra geological samples to lighten their load. Igor Dyatlov told Udin he expected the group to send a telegram from the outpost of Vitsay around February 12th, once they completed the loop. Udin watched them ski away into the white horizon. He would be the last person to ever see them alive. By February 1st, the group had reached the slopes of Kholat Syakhl. It's a name that translates in the local indigenous Mansi language to Dead Mountain. The weather was deteriorating rapidly. A fierce snowstorm was blowing in, dropping temperatures to -25 degrees Fahrenheit. Instead of retreating to the safety of the tree line below, Dyatlov made a tactical decision. He ordered the group to pitch their large, heavy canvas tent right there on the exposed, open slope of the mountain. It was a textbook maneuver for experienced hikers wanting to practice high-altitude alpine camping. They ate a modest dinner of salted meat and biscuits, took off their heavy boots and thick outer coats and settled in for the night, packed shoulder to shoulder for warmth. February 12th came and went with no telegram. At first, no one panicked. Delays in the harsh Russian winter were common. But by February 20th, the families of the hikers demanded action. The Institute, the military, and local volunteers launched a massive search and rescue operation, deploying planes and helicopters over the desolate Ural peaks. On February 26th, a search pilot spotted something on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl. It was the tent. When the ground rescue team arrived, they found a scene that defied all logic. The tent was half collapsed and buried in snow. Inside, the hikers' boots, heavy coats, rations, and even their survival knives were neatly organized. But the hikers themselves were gone. And then, the searchers noticed the most chilling detail of all. The tent had not been torn open by the wind. It had been slashed open from the inside. Whatever happened in the middle of the night, it terrified these seasoned survivalists so much that they couldn't even use the door. They used knives to violently cut their way out through the canvas and ran out into the -25-degree blizzard. The searchers looked down at the snow. 8 or 9 sets of footprints led away from the tent, heading down the slope toward the dark tree line a mile away. The footprints were orderly, not chaotic, but they revealed something horrifying. The hikers were running in their socks, barefoot, or wearing only a single shoe. To be exposed to those temperatures without gear was a guaranteed death sentence. The search team followed the eerie footprints down to the edge of the forest to a large, ancient cedar tree. There, beside the remnants of a desperately small, improvised fire, they found the first 2 bodies. They were dressed only in their underwear, their skin a bizarre purplish-orange hue. The branches of the cedar tree were snapped off up to 15 feet high, suggesting one of them had climbed the tree in a frenzy, either to look for the tent or to hide from something in the dark. Between the cedar tree and the tent, searchers found 3 more bodies, including Igor Dyatlov himself. They were frozen in poses that showed they were desperately trying to crawl back up the mountain toward the safety of the tent. Autopsies on these first 5 bodies concluded they had died of hypothermia. It was tragic, but scientifically understandable. The mystery, it seemed, was simply figuring out what scared them out of the tent. But 2 months later, the spring thaw melted the deep snow in a ravine further into the woods. Their searchers found the remaining 4 hikers, and the condition of their bodies would elevate the Dyatlov Pass incident from a tragic accident into a terrifying declassified nightmare. When the Soviet medical examiners performed autopsies on the final 4 bodies found in the ravine, the results sent shockwaves through the investigative team. Unlike the first 5 who simply froze to death, these 4 had suffered catastrophic, brutal trauma. One hiker had a shattered skull. 2 others, including 20-year-old Lyudmila Dubinina, had their chests completely crushed, with multiple ribs broken on both sides. The lead doctor stated that the force required to cause such internal damage was equivalent to being struck by a speeding car or subjected to a massive explosive shockwave. Yet, inexplicably, there was absolutely no external soft tissue damage. There were no bruises, no scrape marks, no signs of a struggle. It was as if their bones had been crushed by an immense invisible pressure. The horror didn't stop there. Dubinina was missing her eyes, her lips, and her entire tongue. Another hiker was missing his eyebrows. The Soviet investigators were completely baffled. They interrogated the local Mansi hunters, suspecting a territorial dispute. But there were no other footprints anywhere on the mountain. They considered a wild animal attack, but the lack of external wounds ruled that out. Then, things took a turn into the realm of science fiction. The lead investigator ordered radiation tests on the hikers' clothing. The results came back positive. Several pieces of clothing retrieved from the ravine contained unusually high levels of beta radiation. Adding to the paranoia, another group of hikers 50 miles away reported seeing strange, glowing orange spheres hovering in the night sky on the exact dates of the incident. Suddenly, the investigation was abruptly halted by high-ranking Soviet officials. The lead investigator was pulled off the case. The files were heavily classified, and the final official report concluded with a chillingly vague sentence. The hikers died because of a compelling natural force they were unable to overcome. The area was immediately closed off to the public for 3 years. With the sudden government cover-up, the vacuum of information was quickly filled with wild theories. Did they stumble into a secret Soviet weapons testing zone? Were those orange spheres airborne mines? Or perhaps an experimental radiological weapon that went wrong, causing the hikers to go blind and flee in terror? Others suspected the KGB. Some theorized that one of the hikers was a double agent, attempting a radioactive material drop with CIA spies in the wilderness, which went wrong and resulted in a lethal purge. Some even pointed to the psychological phenomenon of paradoxical undressing, a documented effect, where people freezing to death experience a sudden burning sensation and strip their clothes off. This explained the naked bodies, but it absolutely could not explain the shattered skulls and crushed ribs. For decades, scientists proposed another fascinating theory: infrasound. Under very specific wind conditions, the dome-like shape of Kholat Syakhl could act like a massive acoustic funnel, creating a Kármán vortex street. This creates low-frequency sound waves that humans cannot hear, but can physically feel. Infrasound is known to induce extreme nausea, panic, and an overwhelming sense of dread. The theory suggested the wind generated a deafening, silent roar that drove the hikers completely insane, causing them to slash the tent and flee. They fell into the ravine in the pitch black, crushing their chests on the rocks below. While scavengers later removed the soft tissues like eyes and tongues, it was a neat scientific package. But it still did and fully explained the incredible force required to crush their ribs like a car crash. The Dyatlov Pass incident remained a dark stain on Russian history, an unsolvable puzzle of missing tongues, radiation, and a slashed tent. That is, until 2019, when a bizarre combination of an old car crash algorithm and a modern Disney movie finally cracked the case. In 2019, under immense public pressure, the Russian government finally reopened the Dyatlov Pass case. They requested the help of 2 leading Swiss scientists, Johann Gaum, head of the Snow Avalanche Simulation Laboratory, and Alexander Pezrin, a geotechnical engineer. The Russian prosecutors believed it was an avalanche, but the public refused to believe it. The avalanche theory had 4 major problems. First, slope above the tent was only 28 degrees, theoretically too shallow for an avalanche. Second, it hadn't snowed that night. Third, There was no massive debris field covering the tent when it was found. And fourth, avalanches cause asphyxiation, not shattered ribs and skulls, with zero bruising. The Swiss researchers knew they needed entirely new physics to prove what happened. Galm realized that the hikers hadn't faced a normal avalanche. They faced a slab avalanche. When Dyatlov's team dug a perfectly flat shelf into the snow to pitch their tent, they unknowingly destabilized the foundation of the snowpack above them, but it didn't collapse immediately. As the night went on, vicious katabatic winds, heavy, freezing air rushing down the mountain, began blowing loose snow over the crest of the ridge. This snow accumulated directly above the tent, forming a massive, dense block of solid ice, heavily compacted by the wind. But how could they prove this block caused those specific, bizarre injuries? Galm needed a way to simulate the impact of solid snow on the human body. He requested a highly specific, classified algorithm from the 1970s used by General Motors to simulate the crushing of human ribs in violent car crashes. But Galm still needed to simulate the snow itself. By sheer coincidence, he was watching the Disney animated movie Frozen. He was stunned by how realistically the snow moved, fractured, and collapsed in the film. He reached out to the Hollywood animators and asked for their proprietary snow simulation code. By combining the General Motors car crash code with Disney's Frozen animation physics, Game and Puzzarin ran the simulation. The results were flawless. The computer model proved that a massive 16-foot block of dense, solid ice broke loose in the middle of the night. It didn't tumble, slid down the short slope like a heavy concrete slab and dropped directly onto the tent. The simulation showed that this exact type of heavy, localized impact would crush the rib cages and fracture the skulls of the sleeping hikers. But because they were lying on soft bedding, it would not leave bruises or soft tissue damage. It was exactly what the autopsy reports described. The mystery finally unraveled into a clear, tragic timeline. In the dead of night, the ice slab crashed down, trapping them in the suffocating darkness and severely injuring 3 of the hikers, including Dubinina. In a blind panic, fearing a larger avalanche was coming, the uninjured hikers used their knives to slash open the tent. They didn't run away. They dragged their dying friends out of the canvas. Knowing they couldn't dig through the rock-hard ice to get their boots, fearing a secondary collapse, they made the heroic but doomed decision to carry their wounded friends down to the tree line to build a fire. They made it to the cedar tree, but the cold was too much. As the uninjured hikers tried to crawl back up to the tent to get supplies, they froze on the slope. The injured hikers placed down in the ravine for shelter from the wind succumbed to their massive internal injuries. As for the missing eyes and tongue, they were simply the tragic result of lying in a wet ravine for months before discovery. Subject to natural decomposition and small scavengers beneath the snow. The radiation, it was later traced back to the thorium-infused mantles used in camping lanterns of that era. Combined with background radiation from their university labs, there were no aliens, no KGB hit squads, and no secret weapons. Just 9 brave friends, a fatal mistake in snow physics, and the brutal, unforgiving reality of Kalat Siakal. The mountain of the dead had simply claimed its own.